The auction crowd fell silent as Elizabeth Monahan tapped her gavel against the wooden podium, her eyes fixed on the woman standing on the auction block. Olivia Green's honey-brown hair was tangled, her worn dress patched in several places, and a defiant glint sparkled in her eyes despite the circumstances that had brought her to this desperate moment in Monticello, Utah, in the spring of 1876. "Next up, we have Miss Green here," Elizabeth called out, her voice cutting through the dusty air of the auction yard. 23 years of age. She comes with the deed to the old Green homestead about 5 miles east of town. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Everyone in Monticello knew about the Green place, once a promising ranch, now fallen into disrepair after drought and tragedy had struck the family in quick succession. "Starting bid at $50, Elizabeth announced, though her heart wasn't in it. She'd known Olivia's father, respected him, and hated seeing his daughter forced to enter into a marriage contract through auction just to keep from losing everything. The bidding began slowly, mostly from older men looking for a caretaker more than a wife. Olivia stood straight-backed despite her circumstances, eyes forward, refusing to meet the gaze of those who called out their offers for her hand. When the bidding reached $90, Elizabeth leaned toward one of the town council members standing nearby. "She's damaged goods, you know," the man whispered loud enough for the front row to hear. "Father drank himself to death after her mother passed, left her with nothing but debt and that broken-down ranch." The cruel words carried farther than intended. Olivia's shoulders stiffened, but she maintained her composure, even as the bidding stalled. That's when a man at the back of the crowd stepped forward. Preston Hayes removed his worn Stetson, revealing sun-streaked brown hair, and made his way toward the auction block. The crowd parted for him, many nodding in respect. Preston had arrived in Monticello only a year ago, but his skill with horses and his honest way of dealing had quickly earned him a reputation as a man to be trusted. $100, he said clearly, his voice steady. Elizabeth raised her eyebrows in surprise. "I have 100. Do I hear 110? The crowd remained silent, many of the previous bidders shaking their heads. The Green property would require significant work to become profitable again. Preston stepped closer, his eyes meeting Olivia's for the first time. She looked back at him warily, clearly uncertain of his intentions. 100 going once, Elizabeth continued, raising her gavel. Going twice. She's damaged, the councilman repeated, this time directly to Preston. That property's nothing but trouble, and her along with it. Preston's lips curved into a slight smile as he kept his gaze fixed on Olivia. "Good thing I fix broken things for a living," he replied, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet yard. Elizabeth brought the gavel down. "Sold." For $100 to Mr. Hayes. As Preston approached the auction block to complete the transaction, Olivia's expression remained guarded. She had no idea that this moment would change both their lives forever. Preston signed the marriage contract with steady hands, conscious of Olivia's eyes on him. He'd seen her around town occasionally over the past year, but they'd never exchanged more than a passing greeting. Up close, he noticed the light dusting of freckles across her nose and the intelligence in her amber eyes. "Miss Green," he said formally, offering his arm after the paperwork was complete. "Shall we?" Olivia took his arm stiffly. "Mr. Hayes," she acknowledged, her voice surprisingly melodious despite the tension in it. "I should inform you that I have no intention of being anyone's burden. I can work, and I will earn my keep." Preston led her away from the auction block, aware of the curious stares following them. "I would expect nothing less," he replied. "And please call me Preston." They walked in silence through Monticello's dusty Main Street. The town had grown considerably since the first Mormon settlers had arrived, though it remained small compared to larger settlements to the north. Spring had brought green to the surrounding countryside, but the town itself remained predominantly brown wooden buildings with false fronts, dirt streets, and the occasional splash of color from a painted sign or a woman's dress. "I have a wagon just outside the general store," Preston said, breaking the silence. "We can go to your homestead first if you'd like to collect your belongings." Olivia's grip on his arm tightened slightly. "That would be appropriate, thank you." At the general store, Preston helped Olivia into the wagon before climbing up beside her. He released the brake and clicked his tongue, urging the two chestnut horses into motion. "You're not what I expected," Olivia said suddenly as they left town behind. Preston glanced at her. "What did you expect? Someone older or desperate?" Her hands twisted in her lap. "Most men looking for a wife at auction are one or the other, sometimes both." "I'm 28, Preston replied. "And while I wouldn't call myself desperate, I've been in Monticello long enough to know I don't much care for bachelor living." "So you decided to purchase a wife?" There was an edge to her voice now. Preston sighed. "I decided to help someone who needed it." The marriage contract was the only legal way to do that. "I don't need charity. It's not charity. It's an arrangement that could benefit us both." He kept his eyes on the road ahead. "You get to keep your family's land and I get a partner." "Partner?" Olivia raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Yes. I've been looking to expand my business. Your land would be perfect for raising horses if it was properly tended." Olivia fell silent, considering his words. The road to the green homestead was rutted and overgrown, evidence of its neglect. As they crested a small rise, the property came into view: a modest house with a sagging porch, a barn that needed repair, and fields that had gone to seed. "It's not much anymore," Olivia said quietly. "My father lost heart after my mother died 3 years ago. The drought 2 summers back killed most of our cattle. He started drinking heavily after that." Preston studied the property with an appraising eye. "The bones are good. Land still fertile from the look of those wildflowers. Water source. There's a creek that runs year-round on the north edge of the property and a well near the house." He nodded. "That's promising." He guided the wagon to a stop in front of the house and set the brake. "Shall we?" Inside, the house was clean but sparse. Olivia had clearly done her best with limited resources. She moved through the rooms with efficiency, gathering her personal belongings, mostly clothing, and a few keepsakes, into a trunk. Preston wandered through the house, noting its sturdy construction despite the cosmetic issues. In one room, he found a work table covered with small mechanical parts and tools. "My father's workroom," Olivia said from the doorway. "He was quite skilled with his hands before." "May I?" Preston gestured to a partially disassembled clock on the table. Olivia nodded and he picked it up, examining it carefully. With deft movements, he adjusted a spring, tightened a gear, and wound the mechanism. The clock began to tick steadily. "You have a talent for fixing things," Olivia observed. Preston smiled slightly. "It's what I do. Horses primarily, but I've always had a knack for understanding how things work." He set the clock down. "Are you ready to go?" She hesitated. "Where exactly are we going, Mr. Hayes?" "Preston," he corrected gently. "My place is on the west side of town. It's not large, but it's comfortable. I have a house and stables. And what will be expected of me there?" The question hung heavy between them. Preston met her gaze directly. "Your companionship, your help with the business if you're willing, and your respect. Nothing more until you're ready, if ever." Something in Olivia's expression softened slightly. "I think I'm ready to go then." They loaded her trunk into the wagon and took one last look at the green homestead before heading back toward town. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the landscape. "We'll come back soon," Preston promised. "See what can be done to bring this place back to life." Olivia said nothing, but the tight line of her shoulders relaxed just a fraction. Preston's property was indeed on the west edge of Monticello, set back from the main road. The house was modest but well-maintained, with a covered porch and window boxes waiting for summer flowers. Behind it stood a large stable and corral where several horses grazed peacefully. "This is lovely," Olivia said, genuine surprise in her voice. Preston helped her down from the wagon. "It's home. Let me show you around." The interior was simply furnished but comfortable, a sitting room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen with a cast iron stove, 2 bedrooms, and a small study filled with books. Everything was orderly and clean. "You've been living here alone?" Olivia asked, running her finger along a dust-free shelf. "Mrs. Tanner from town comes twice a week to help with cleaning," Preston explained. "But yes, just me otherwise." He showed her to the smaller of the 2 bedrooms. "This will be yours. I thought you might want your own space while we get acquainted." Olivia stood in the doorway, taking in the simple bed with its patchwork quilt, the dresser with a mirror, and a small writing desk beneath the window. "Thank you," she said quietly. "This is very considerate." "I'll bring in your trunk," Preston said. "Then perhaps you'd like to freshen up before dinner. I'm not much of a cook, I'm afraid, but I can manage eggs and bacon without burning the house down." The hint of a smile touched Olivia's lips. "I'm quite capable in the kitchen. Perhaps I could prepare dinner while you tend to your horses." Preston nodded. "I'd appreciate that. The pantry is stocked, so you should find what you need." That first evening established a tentative peace between them. Olivia prepared a simple but satisfying meal, and they ate mostly in silence, each stealing glances at the other when they thought they weren't being observed. "Tell me about your business," Olivia finally said as they finished eating. Preston wiped his mouth with a napkin. "I train horses both for riding and for work. Break the wild ones gently, retrain those with bad habits. I've developed something of a reputation for handling the difficult cases." "Hence the comment about fixing broken things," Olivia remarked dryly. Preston had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "It wasn't the most eloquent moment of my life, but it was honest. I believe most things and people deserve a second chance if someone's willing to put in the effort. And you think I need fixing?" There was that edge to her voice again. "No," Preston said firmly. "I think you've been dealt a difficult hand and are doing your best with it. That's not the same as being broken." Olivia studied him for a long moment. "Why did you really bid on me today, Mr. Hayes?" "Preston," he corrected again. "And I bid on you because I couldn't stand watching good people like Elizabeth Monahan being forced to auction off a young woman to pay her father's debts. It wasn't right. So it was pity. No, it was respect." His eyes held her steadily. "I respected the way you held yourself with dignity despite the circumstances. I respected that you were willing to sacrifice your freedom to honor your father's debts, and I thought perhaps we might help each other." "How would I help you?" Olivia asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. "I'm good with horses and machines, but terrible with ledgers and correspondence. My business could grow if I had a partner with a head for figures." He paused. "Plus, I meant what I said about your land. With work, it could be excellent for raising horses." Olivia considered this. "I was educated at the town school. I can read, write, and do sums well enough." "That's more than I can say," Preston admitted. "Reading and basic mathematics are the extent of my education. My mother taught me before she passed, but formal schooling wasn't available where I grew up." "And where was that?" "Missouri originally, then Kansas, Colorado, and finally here." He began collecting their dishes. "I've been moving west most of my life." "Running from something?" Olivia asked shrewdly. Preston shook his head. "Looking for something, I think. A place that felt like it could be home. And you found that in Monticello." "I'm beginning to think so." His gaze held hers for a moment before he turned away to wash the dishes. That night, lying in her new bed, Olivia stared at the unfamiliar ceiling and tried to make sense of the day's events. That morning, she had woken in her childhood home, dreading the auction that would determine her fate. Now she was the legal wife of a man she barely knew, sleeping in his house but not his bed, apparently expected to be his business partner rather than just his spouse. Preston Hayes was not what she had expected. He was quiet, respectful, and strangely gentle for a man who worked with wild horses. His hands were calloused but clean, his manner straightforward but never crude. Most surprising was his apparent lack of interest in exercising his marital rights, something she had steeled herself to endure. Instead, he had given her a room of her own and spoken of partnership. Olivia wasn't naive enough to believe this arrangement would remain so civil indefinitely. Men had needs, and eventually, he would expect her to fulfill the role of a true wife. But for now, she was grateful for the reprieve and the unexpected kindness. Sleep claimed her eventually, and morning came too quickly with the sound of activity in the kitchen. Olivia dressed hurriedly in one of her few presentable dresses and made her way to the main room to find Preston already up, preparing coffee. "Good morning," he greeted her. "I hope I didn't wake you. I'm used to early starts." "Good morning," she replied, suddenly self-conscious about her appearance. She hadn't had time to properly arrange her hair, and it hung in loose waves down her back. "I should have been up earlier to prepare breakfast." "No need," Preston said, pouring coffee into 2 cups. "I usually just have coffee and bread in the mornings. More substantial meals can wait until later." He handed her a cup, and she accepted it gratefully. The coffee was strong but good. "I thought we might ride out to your property today," Preston suggested. "Take a proper inventory of what needs doing. If that suits you," Olivia nodded. "That would be sensible." After a simple breakfast, Preston showed Olivia to the stables. 6 horses occupied the stalls, with room for several more. Each animal turned its head curiously as they entered. "This is my livelihood," Preston said with evident pride. "These 3 are fully trained and ready for sale." He indicated 3 magnificent animals, a bay gelding, a chestnut mare, and a dappled gray. "These other 2 are works in progress. Both came to me with bad habits that needed correcting." The horses in question, a black stallion and a Palomino mare, watched them with intelligent eyes. "And this one?" Olivia asked, approaching the 6th stall where a gentle-looking sorrel mare stood. "That's Penny. She's mine, not for sale." Preston's voice softened. "She was my first success, came to me half-starved and terrified of people. Now she's the gentlest horse you'll ever meet." As if to prove his point, Penny stretched her neck over the stall door, nickering softly. Olivia hesitantly reached out to stroke the mare's nose. "She's beautiful," Olivia murmured. "She's yours to ride whenever you wish," Preston said. "I think you'll suit each other." Olivia glanced at him in surprise. "I haven't ridden in years, not since before my mother fell ill." "It's not something you forget," Preston assured her, "and Penny's patient with beginners." He saddled Penny for Olivia and a sturdy roan gelding for himself. They set off toward the green homestead as the morning sun climbed higher in the cloudless blue sky. Spring in Utah could be unpredictable, but today promised to be fair and warm. As they rode, Preston pointed out features of the land, identifying plants and describing his plans for expanding his horse breeding business. Olivia found herself responding to his enthusiasm, despite her determination to maintain emotional distance. At the green property, they dismounted and tied their horses to the porch rail. In daylight, the place looked even more run down than it had the previous evening, but Preston walked the grounds with the eye of a man who saw potential rather than decay. "The house needs work but is structurally sound," he observed. "The barn needs a new roof and some of the supporting beams replaced. Fences all need repair." Olivia followed him, noting his methodical assessment. "It would take months of work, and money we don't have." Preston looked at her thoughtfully. "I have some savings, Not a fortune, but enough to buy materials. As for the work, I'm not afraid of that. Why would you invest in this place? Olivia asked, genuinely confused. Your home is perfectly adequate. Your land has advantages mine doesn't, more acreage, better water access, and room to expand. He gestured toward the rolling fields beyond the barn. With the right improvements, we could triple my current capacity for raising horses. We, Olivia repeated softly. Preston met her gaze directly. Yes, we. This is your family's land, Olivia. I won't take that from you. Whatever we build here, we build together. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. She turned away to hide the sudden moisture in her eyes. I should check inside, see if there's anything else I want to bring back. Preston nodded. I'll examine the barn more thoroughly. Inside, Olivia moved through the rooms that had been her home for all of her 23 years. The house felt empty now, haunted not by ghosts but by memories, her mother teaching her to sew by the window in the front room, her father's deep laugh before grief and alcohol had claimed him, family meals around the table that now stood bare. In her parents' bedroom, she opened her mother's cedar chest. Most of the valuable items had been sold to pay debts, but at the bottom lay her mother's wedding quilt, a beautiful piece of craftsmanship that Olivia had hidden away to prevent its sale. She lifted it out, hugging the fabric to her chest. When Preston found her, she was sitting on the edge of the bed, the quilt in her lap, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. He hesitated in the doorway. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I can give you more time. Olivia shook her head. No, I'm being foolish. It's just. This was my mother's pride and joy. She spent months making it before she married my father. Preston entered the room slowly and sat beside her, careful to leave space between them. It's beautiful work, he observed, noting the intricate pattern of stars in blues and creams. She taught me to quilt, Olivia said, running her fingers over the stitches. Said every woman should know how to create beauty from scraps. She sounds like a wise woman. She was. Olivia carefully folded the quilt. This is all I have left of her now. Then we should take it with us, Preston said gently. It belongs in your room. Olivia looked at him with surprise. Most men would have dismissed such sentimentality. Thank you. They spent another hour at the property, Preston making notes on repairs needed while Olivia gathered a few more personal items she hadn't taken the day before. By midday, they were riding back to town. I'd like to start work on your property next week, Preston said as they traveled. The sooner we begin, the sooner it will be usable again. Do you truly believe it can be salvaged? Olivia asked. Preston nodded. With work and patience, yes. Nothing there is beyond repair. As they passed through town, they drew curious glances from residents eager for gossip about the auction bride and her new husband. Olivia kept her eyes forward, her back straight, though she felt her cheeks warm under the scrutiny. Outside the general store, they encountered Elizabeth Monahan, who had acted as auctioneer the day before. Mrs. Hayes, she greeted Olivia with a genuine smile. How are you settling in? Olivia was startled by the use of her new surname. Well enough, thank you, Mrs. Monahan. Preston, Elizabeth acknowledged with a nod. I trust you're treating your new bride with consideration, always, Preston replied simply. Elizabeth studied them both. I'm glad to see you out and about together. Tongues have been wagging since yesterday's auction. People wondering about your intentions, Preston. My intentions were straightforward, he said. To help Miss Green keep her family property and to gain a partner in my business. And the marriage aspect. Elizabeth pressed, her direct manner typical of a woman who had survived the frontier by never mincing words. Preston's expression remained calm. Is between Mrs. Hayes and myself. Elizabeth seemed satisfied with this answer. Well, I hope to see you both at church on Sunday. Nothing silences gossip faster than a public appearance together. After Elizabeth moved on, Olivia turned to Preston. Is that something you wish to do? Attend church together. I'm not a particularly religious man, he admitted, but Elizabeth makes a good point about appearances. It would make things easier for you in town if we presented a united front. Olivia considered this. I've always attended Sunday services. My absence would only fuel more speculation. Then we'll go together, Preston decided. For now, let's get these supplies and head home. The word home sounded strange to Olivia's ears when referring to Preston's house, but she didn't correct him. The next few days established a routine between them. Olivia took over the household duties naturally, finding satisfaction in creating order and comfort. Preston worked with his horses during the day and spent evenings making plans for renovating the green property. They ate meals together, their conversations gradually becoming less stilted as they discovered shared interests. Olivia was surprised to learn that Preston enjoyed reading when he had time, though he admitted to struggling with more complex texts due to his limited formal education. My father had a few books, he explained one evening as they sat before the fire. Mostly practical manuals on horse training and such, but my mother had a volume of poetry she cherished. She used to read it aloud to me. Do you still have it? Olivia asked. Preston shook his head. It was lost when our house burned. I was 14. Is that when she died? Yes. His face grew solemn. Fire took everything: our home, my mother, our stability. My father never quite recovered. He drifted from job to job after that, taking me along until I was old enough to make my own way. Olivia felt a surprising kinship in their shared loss. I was 20 when my mother died, typhoid. My father started drinking heavily soon after. Loss changes people, Preston observed. Some rise above it, others are consumed by it. Which were you? Olivia asked softly. Preston considered the question. Neither at first. I was angry for a long time. Angry at fate, at God, at my father for not saving her. He stared into the fire. It took years before I understood that anger wouldn't bring her back, and that the only way forward was to build something new. Is that what you're doing here in Monticello? Building something new, trying to, he admitted. What about you, Olivia? What do you want to build? The question caught her off guard. No one had asked what she wanted in a very long time. I don't know, she said honestly. For the past few years, I've been focused solely on survival. Preston nodded in understanding. Perhaps that can change now. On Sunday morning, Olivia dressed with particular care in her best dress, a blue cotton that had seen better days but was still presentable. She arranged her hair in a simple but elegant style and pinned her mother's cameo brooch to her collar. When she emerged from her room, Preston was waiting in the sitting room, dressed in clean dark trousers and a white shirt, his usual work clothes replaced by his Sunday best. He'd trimmed his beard and slicked back his hair, and for the first time, Olivia truly noticed his handsome features: strong jaw, straight nose, and eyes that crinkled slightly at the corners when he smiled. You look lovely, he said simply. Thank you, she replied, suddenly shy. You clean up well yourself. They drove to town in Preston's wagon, joining the stream of families heading toward the white clapboard church at the center of Monticello. As Elizabeth had predicted, their arrival together drew attention, but Preston remained unruffled, helping Olivia down from the wagon and offering his arm as they walked inside. The service passed in a blur for Olivia, hyper-aware of Preston beside her and the curious glances directed their way. When it came time to sing hymns, she was surprised to hear Preston's deep baritone joining in, his voice sure and steady. Afterward, there was the inevitable socializing on the church steps. Several women approached Olivia, some with genuine welcomes, others clearly fishing for gossip. Mrs. Hayes, Clara Wilson greeted her with a smile too wide to be sincere. What an unexpected match. How are you finding married life? Before Olivia could respond, Preston appeared at her side, his hand gently resting at the small of her back. Mrs. Wilson, he acknowledged politely. My wife is still settling in, but we're managing well, thank you. The possessive "my wife" sent an unexpected shiver through Olivia. It was the first time Preston had referred to her that way. Preston is helping me restore my family's property, Olivia added, finding her voice. We hope to have it operational again by summer's end. How? Industrious, Clara replied, clearly disappointed by the lack of scandal in their responses. Elizabeth Monahan joined their circle, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Clara, I believe your husband is looking for you, she said pointedly. After Clara departed, Elizabeth turned to Olivia and Preston. You're handling the vultures admirably. First Sunday is always the worst. They'll lose interest once something more scandalous comes along. Let's hope that's soon, Olivia murmured. Preston's hand remained at her back, warm and reassuring. Shall we head home? I thought we might ride out to your property this afternoon if you're not too tired. Olivia nodded, grateful for the excuse to leave. That would be fine. As they drove away from town, Olivia gradually relaxed. Thank you for that. I've never enjoyed being the center of attention. You handled it well, Preston said. Better than I would have alone. We make a good team, it seems. Preston glanced at her, a small smile playing at his lips. Yes, we do. After a simple midday meal, they rode to the Green property. Preston had already purchased some lumber and tools, and he spent the afternoon making emergency repairs to the barn roof while Olivia cleared debris from the yard. Working together under the spring sunshine, they fell into a comfortable rhythm. Preston was patient in explaining what needed to be done, and Olivia proved a quick study and willing helper. By late afternoon, they had accomplished more than either had expected. You're stronger than you look, Preston observed as Olivia helped him move a fallen support beam. Farm life builds endurance, she replied. I wasn't always the lady of the house. I worked alongside my father in the fields before. Before things changed, Preston finished for her when she trailed off. Well, I'm grateful for your help. This would take twice as long on my own. As the sun began to set, they sat on the porch steps, tired but satisfied with their progress. Olivia had brought water and biscuits, which they shared in companionable silence as they watched the golden light wash over the land. It's beautiful here, Preston said finally. Even in its current state, you can see why your parents chose it. My father used to say the sunsets alone were worth the hardship, Olivia replied. He and my mother would sit right here each evening watching the sky change colors. Her voice softened with memory. They were very much in love, even after 20 years of marriage. Preston glanced at her. That's rare from what I've observed. Did your parents love each other that way? Olivia asked. Yes, I believe they did. My father was never the same after we lost my mother. Preston brushed crumbs from his trousers. I used to think that kind of love was dangerous, making you vulnerable to devastating loss. And now I think perhaps it's worth the risk. His eyes met hers briefly before returning to the sunset. The moment hung between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Olivia found herself studying Preston's profile, noting the strength in his jawline, the tiny scar near his right temple, the way his eyes reflected the golden light. For the first time since their hastily arranged marriage, she allowed herself to consider what it might mean to be truly his wife, not just in name. The thought both frightened and intrigued her. We should head back before it gets dark, Preston said eventually, breaking the spell. The ride home was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. That night, as they bid each other good night at their respective bedroom doors, there was a moment of hesitation, a lingering glance that acknowledged something had shifted between them. The following weeks fell into a pattern. Weekdays were spent with Preston working with his horses, while Olivia managed the household and began keeping the business ledgers, organizing the chaotic records Preston had haphazardly maintained. Evenings were for planning, with Preston teaching Olivia about horse breeding and training while she helped improve his reading skills. Weekends they devoted to the green property, making steady progress on repairs. Preston hired 2 men from town to help with the larger tasks, but much of the work they did themselves. Olivia planted a vegetable garden behind the house, and Preston rebuilt the corral fence in preparation for bringing horses to the property. Gradually, the homestead began to show signs of rebirth. Fresh paint brightened the house exterior, new shingles replaced the leaking roof, and repaired fences marked clear boundary lines once more. As May turned to June, the desert heat intensified. They started their work earlier each day to avoid the worst of the afternoon sun. On one particularly hot Saturday, Olivia was helping Preston replace floorboards in the barn when she lost her footing on the ladder and fell. Preston caught her before she hit the ground, his strong arms wrapping securely around her. For a breathless moment, they remained frozen, Olivia in Preston's embrace, their faces inches apart, her hands gripping his shoulders. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice rough. Olivia nodded, suddenly very aware of his proximity, the warmth of his body against hers, the concern in his eyes. "Yes, thank you for catching me." Preston set her gently on her feet but didn't immediately step back. His hands remained at her waist, and Olivia found herself unwilling to break the contact. "You should be more careful," he said softly. "These old boards aren't reliable." "I will be," she promised, her eyes locked with his. Something changed in Preston's expression, a flicker of decision before he slowly, deliberately leaned forward. He paused, giving her time to pull away if she wished. When she didn't, he pressed his lips to hers in a gentle, questioning kiss. Olivia had been kissed before, awkward, fumbling encounters with boys from town, but never like this. Preston's kiss was confident yet restrained, a request rather than a demand. After a moment of surprise, she responded, her lips softening under his. The kiss deepened briefly before Preston pulled back, his breathing slightly uneven. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks," he admitted. Olivia felt a blush rise to her cheeks. I didn't mind." A smile touched Preston's lips. "High praise indeed." The moment was interrupted by the distant sound of an approaching wagon. Preston reluctantly stepped back just as one of their hired workers appeared in the barn doorway. "Mr. Hayes, got those hinges you wanted from town," the man called. "Thank you, Jim." "Just set them by the house," Preston replied, his voice remarkably steady despite the moment that had just passed between them. For the rest of the day, they worked side by side as usual, but something had undeniably changed. Their hands brushed more frequently, their glances lingered longer, and a new awareness hummed between them like an electrical current. That evening, as they rode home together, Preston finally broke the comfortable silence. "Olivia, I want you to know that I expect nothing from you that you're not ready to give." She glanced at him, understanding his meaning. "I appreciate that, this arrangement between us. It's not what I expected." "In what way?" "I expected a master, not a partner," she said honestly. "I've been pleasantly surprised." Preston considered this. "I've never wanted to own another person, Olivia. What I want is a true companion, someone to share life's burdens and joys." "Is that why you came to my auction? Looking for companionship?" "Partly," he admitted. "But there was something about you specifically that caught my attention. The way you held yourself with dignity despite the circumstances. I admired that." Olivia felt warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the summer heat. "You've been more than fair to me, Preston." "More than generous." "It's not generosity," he said seriously. "It's respect." When they reached home, Preston helped her down from her horse, his hands lingering at her waist. "Would it be presumptuous of me to kiss you good night?" he asked quietly. Olivia shook her head, her heart suddenly racing. "Not presumptuous at all." This kiss was different from the one they'd shared in the barn, more confident, more thorough. Preston's arms encircled her, drawing her against him, and Olivia found herself responding with unexpected eagerness. Her hands slid up to his shoulders, then to the nape of his neck, fingers threading through his hair. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Preston rested his forehead against hers. "We should go inside," he murmured. That night, Olivia lay awake long after retiring to her room, replaying the kisses in her mind, examining the new feelings that Preston had awakened in her. Their arrangement had begun as one of convenience and necessity, but somewhere along the way, it had become something else entirely. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Olivia was preparing breakfast when a knock came at the door. Preston, who had been out checking on a new foal, answered it to find Sheriff Malcolm Davies on the porch. "Morning, Hayes," the sheriff greeted him. "Hope I'm not intruding too early." "Not at all, Sheriff. What can I do for you?" Preston invited the man inside. Olivia nodded a greeting to the sheriff, continuing her work at the stove but listening carefully. "Got a telegram yesterday from Cedar City," Davies explained, accepting a cup of coffee from Preston. "Seems they've got a problem with a horse thief who's been working his way north. Man named Garrett. Thought you should know since you've got valuable stock." Preston frowned. "Appreciate the warning. Any description of this Garrett?" Tall fellow, red hair, scar on his left cheek. "Travels with 2 other men. They've hit 3 ranches already, always taking the best breeding stock." "I'll keep an eye out," Preston assured him. "We've been working on the Green property too, so I'll make sure both places are secure." The sheriff nodded, his eyes moving to Olivia. "Mrs. Hayes, the place is looking good. Town's saying you two have been working wonders out there." "Thank you, Sheriff," Olivia replied. "It's been a team effort." After the sheriff departed, Preston's expression remained troubled. "I should bring the horses closer to the house for a while," he said. "At least until this thief is caught." "Is it really that serious?" Olivia asked, serving breakfast. "Horse thieves are always serious in these parts," Preston replied grimly. "A good breeding horse can be worth more than gold to the right buyer. And thieves aren't usually gentle with their stolen property." The threat cast a shadow over their day. Preston spent the morning reinforcing the stable doors and checking the fences, while Olivia kept the business ledger updated with their recent expenses for the Green property renovation. By afternoon, Preston had moved all his horses into the corral nearest the house, where they could be easily monitored. "I'm going to ride out to your property," he told Olivia. "Make sure everything's secure there as well." "I'll come with you," she decided, setting aside her work. As they rode, Olivia noticed Preston's vigilant scanning of the landscape, his hand resting near the revolver he wore at his hip. She'd known he carried a weapon, but had never seen him so alert to potential danger. "Have you had trouble with thieves before?" she asked as they approached the Green homestead. "Not here," Preston replied, "but back in Colorado, yes. Lost 2 good horses to raiders. Nearly lost my life trying to get them back." "Is that how you got the scar?" Olivia nodded toward the thin white line near his temple. "Yes." Lesson learned the hard way: horses can be replaced. Lives can't. At the Green property, they checked all the outbuildings and repaired a weak section of fencing that could have provided easy access. As they worked, Preston explained his plans for security once they brought horses to the property. "We'll need someone living here full-time eventually," he said as they secured the barn doors. "Either us or a trusted hand." The casual mention of them potentially living together at her family home sent a flutter through Olivia's stomach. She was surprised by how much she liked the idea. "I've been thinking," Preston continued, "once the repairs are complete, it might make sense for us to move here permanently. The house is larger, the land more suitable for breeding operations. What about your place in town?" "I could keep it as a base for business transactions, maybe rent it out when we're not using it," He glanced at her. But only if that's what you want to. This is your family home, after all. Olivia looked around at the property that held so many memories, now being given new life through their combined efforts. I think I would like that, she said softly. It feels right, somehow. Preston smiled, the expression warming his eyes. Then that's what we'll do. As the sun began to set, they made their way back to town. The road was quiet, with only the occasional rider passing in the opposite direction. About halfway to town, Preston suddenly reined in his horse, his body tense. "What is it?" Olivia asked, immediately alert. "Not sure," he murmured, scanning the rocky outcroppings that bordered the road. "Thought I saw movement." They remained still for a long moment, listening. The desert was quiet except for the soft whistling of the wind through the rocks. Finally, Preston relaxed slightly. "Probably just a coyote." "Let's keep moving, but stay close." They continued at a slightly quicker pace, both watching the surroundings carefully. Olivia found herself grateful for Preston's protective presence, a feeling that surprised her. She had prided herself on her independence for so long that relying on someone else felt foreign, yet not unwelcome. The next few days passed without incident. Preston took extra precautions with his horses, and Sheriff Davies increased patrols around the outlying properties. The threat of thieves seemed to recede, though Preston remained vigilant. June brought the promise of summer festivals in town. Montaicelo's Founders' Day celebration was approaching, an annual event with music, dancing, and community competitions. Despite having lived in town all her life, Olivia had missed the festivities the previous year due to her father's declining health. "Would you like to attend?" Preston asked one evening as they sat on the porch, enjoying the cooler air after a hot day. "I'm not much for crowds, but I hear the dancing is quite something." "I haven't danced in years," Olivia admitted. "But yes, I think I'd enjoy that." Preston looked pleased. "Then we'll go. It would be good to participate in community events. Make our partnership more official in the eyes of the town." "Partnership," Olivia repeated, testing the word. "Is that how you see our marriage?" Preston turned to face her, his expression serious. "For now, yes. But I want you to know, Olivia, that I hope for more between us eventually. If you're willing." The directness of his statement made her breath catch. "What exactly are you hoping for?" "A real marriage," he said simply. "One based on mutual respect and genuine affection, perhaps even love in time." Olivia felt a flush rise to her cheeks. "That's a very honest answer." "I've never seen the point in being anything else." He reached out slowly and took her hand in his. "I know our beginning was unconventional, but I believe we could build something meaningful together." Olivia looked down at their joined hands, as large and calloused from work, hers smaller but equally marked by labor. "I'm beginning to believe that too," she admitted quietly. Preston's thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. "No rush, Olivia. We have time." The night of the Founders' Day celebration arrived warm and clear. Olivia wore her best dress, a pale yellow cotton that she had carefully altered to update its style. She pinned her hair up with her mother's tortoiseshell combs and added a touch of rose water to her wrists. When she emerged from her room, Preston was waiting in his Sunday best, his hair neatly combed, his usual stubble trimmed to a respectable beard. His eyes widened appreciatively at the sight of her. "You look beautiful," he said with genuine admiration. "Thank you." Olivia smiled, pleased by his reaction. "You're quite handsome yourself." They rode into town as the celebration was beginning. Lanterns hung from every building around the town square, casting a golden glow over the festivities. A platform had been erected for the musicians, and already couples were dancing to lively fiddle music. Booths lined the edges of the square, offering food, drink, and games of skill. Children darted between the adults, their laughter adding to the festive atmosphere. Olivia felt a surge of pleasure at being part of the community celebration after so long focused on mere survival. Preston offered his arm, and they strolled through the crowd, greeting neighbors and stopping occasionally at the various booths. Several people commented on the improvements at the Green property, and Olivia found herself proudly describing their plans for the future. "You two have accomplished more in a month than most could in a year," Elizabeth Monahan remarked when they encountered her near the refreshment table. "The whole town's talking about it. Preston is remarkably skilled," Olivia said, glancing at her husband with genuine appreciation. "And determined. And you, Mrs. Hayes, are you finding your new circumstances agreeable?" Elizabeth asked, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Olivia met her gaze steadily. "Very much so. It seems auction day was fortunate for us both." Elizabeth smiled, satisfied. "I'm glad to hear it. Now you should get that husband of yours onto the dance floor. The night won't last forever." As if on cue, the musicians began a waltz. Preston turned to Olivia with a questioning look. "Shall we?" She placed her hand in his, allowing him to lead her to the dance floor. "I may be rusty," she warned. "As am I," he admitted. "But we seem to work well together in other areas. Perhaps this will be no different." Preston's hand settled at her waist, his other clasping hers as they began to move with the music. After a few tentative steps, they found their rhythm, turning smoothly among the other couples. Olivia was surprised by Preston's grace for a man who spent his days working with horses. He moved with unexpected elegance. "You dance very well for someone who claims to be rusty," she observed. A smile quirked his lips. "My mother insisted I learn. Said no son of hers would stomp around a dance floor like a wounded buffalo." Olivia laughed, the sound bright and genuine. "She was a wise woman." "She would have liked you," Preston said softly, his eyes holding hers. The comment touched Olivia deeply. "I wish I could have met her." They danced through 3 songs before taking a break for refreshments. As they sipped lemonade at the edge of the square, Olivia became aware of being watched. She scanned the crowd and noticed 3 men standing near the livery stable, one with distinctive red hair, observing the festivities with detached interest. "Preston," she said quietly. "Those men by the stable, could they be the thieves the sheriff mentioned?" Preston followed her gaze, his body tensing slightly. "Possibly. The redhead matches the description." He set down his cup. "Stay here. I'm going to find Sheriff Davies." "Be careful," Olivia said, suddenly anxious. Preston squeezed her hand reassuringly before making his way through the crowd. Olivia remained where she was, keeping the strangers in sight. As she watched, the red-haired man seemed to notice her attention and said something to his companions. All 3 mounted horses that had been hitched nearby and rode slowly out of town. When Preston returned with Sheriff Davies, the men were gone. "They were heading east," Olivia reported. "Toward the Green property." The sheriff frowned. "Could be coincidence, but I don't like it. Hayes, you should get your wife home, secure your stock." "I'll gather some men and check the outlying properties." Preston nodded grimly. "We'll head back now." As they rode home through the gathering darkness, Olivia could feel Preston's tension. "Do you think they're really the thieves?" she asked. "Don't know for certain, but better safe than sorry." His hand rested on his revolver. "I've worked too hard building this business to lose it to thieves." At home, Preston immediately checked the stables while Olivia lit lamps in the house. All the horses were accounted for and calm, showing no signs of disturbance. Preston reinforced the stable doors anyway, then joined Olivia inside. "Everything seems secure," he reported, removing his hat and running a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry our evening was cut short." "It's all right," Olivia assured him. "I enjoyed the time we had." Preston smiled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "As did I. You're a fine dancer, Mrs. Hayes." "As are you, Mr. Hayes." She returned his smile, then hesitated before adding, It was nice being out together as husband and wife. Something softened in Preston's expression. He moved closer, taking her hands in his. "It felt right," he said quietly. Olivia nodded, her heart quickening. Yes, it did. Preston's gaze dropped to her lips and he leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. Instead, Olivia rose slightly on her toes to meet him halfway. The kiss was gentle at first, a continuation of the tenderness they'd shared on the dance floor. But as Olivia's hands moved to Preston's shoulders, the kiss deepened, becoming something more urgent. Preston's arms wrapped around her waist, drawing her closer as months of restraint began to give way to genuine desire. Olivia responded with a passion that surprised even herself, her fingers threading through his hair. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. Preston rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed as if gathering control. "Olivia," he murmured, "I want you to be sure." She understood his meaning immediately. In the eyes of the law and the town, they were already married, but in truth, they had been living as respectful housemates these past weeks. What was happening between them now would change that forever. "I am sure," she whispered, surprising herself with her certainty. "I want to be your wife, Preston. In every way." His eyes opened, searching hers for any doubt. Finding none, he kissed her again, this time with undisguised hunger. Olivia matched his fervor, all the feelings she'd been carefully containing finally breaking free. Preston lifted her into his arms and carried her to his bedroom, their bedroom now where the moonlight spilled through the window, casting silver patterns across the quilt. That night, their marriage became real in the most ancient and intimate of ways, their bodies learning each other's rhythms as naturally as they had learned to work together. Afterward, Olivia lay in Preston's arms, her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder as contentment settled over them both. "I never expected this," she admitted softly. "When I stood on that auction block, I thought my life was ending. Instead, it was just beginning." Preston pressed a kiss to her forehead. "For both of us," he agreed. "I came to Monticello looking for a place to belong, found more than I bargained for." Sleep claimed them eventually, wrapped in each other's warmth. But their peace was shattered in the early hours of the morning by the frantic whinnying of horses and the crack of a gunshot. Preston was instantly alert, reaching for his trousers and gun. "Stay here," he ordered, but Olivia was already pulling on her nightdress. "I'm coming with you," she insisted, grabbing the rifle that hung over the bedroom door. There was no time to argue. They rushed outside to find 3 men attempting to lead Preston's horses from the corral. One of them, the red-haired man they'd seen in town, had a rope around the neck of Penny, Preston's prized mare. "Let her go," Preston called out, his voice deadly calm as he raised his revolver. "Sheriff Davies is on his way." The thieves whirled around, the red-haired leader drawing his own weapon. "Don't think so, Hayes," he snarled. "These horses are leaving with us and you'd be smart to stay out of the way." "Not happening, Garrett." Preston's aim remained steady. "Last chance to walk away from this." Instead of answering, Garrett fired, the bullet whistling past Preston's ear. Preston returned fire, hitting the man in the shoulder. Chaos erupted as the other 2 thieves began shooting while trying to control the now panicking horses. Olivia took cover behind a water barrel, raising her rifle to provide covering fire for Preston, who had ducked behind the corral fence. One of the thieves spotted her and took aim, but before he could fire, Olivia's shot caught him in the leg. He fell with a howl of pain. The remaining thief, seeing his companions wounded, made a desperate attempt to escape, leaping onto one of Preston's horses. Preston fired again, catching the man in the side. He tumbled from the horse, landing hard in the dust. In the sudden silence that followed, Preston moved cautiously toward the fallen men, keeping his revolver trained on them. All three were wounded but alive. "Olivia," Preston called, his voice tight with controlled fear, "are you all right?" "Yes," she replied, stepping out from behind the barrel, rifle still ready. "I'm fine." Relief washed over Preston's face. "Check the horses while I secure these men." Using rope from the stable, Preston bound the thieves, ignoring their curses and threats. Garrett, the leader, glared at him with undisguised hatred. "Should have killed you when I had the chance," he spat. Preston regarded him coolly. "That mistake's going to cost you several years in territorial prison." By the time Sheriff Davies arrived with a posse from town, the sun was beginning to rise. The thieves were loaded into a wagon to be taken to the jail, their wounds attended to by the town doctor who had accompanied the sheriff. "You two handled yourselves well," Davies commented, surveying the scene. "Not many women would stand their ground like that, Mrs. Hayes." Olivia, now properly dressed, stood beside Preston. "My father taught me to shoot when I was 12. Said a woman alone on the frontier needed to protect herself." "Wise man," the sheriff nodded. "You're lucky to have such a capable wife, Hayes." Preston's arm slipped around Olivia's waist. "Don't I know it?" After the excitement died down and the sheriff's posse departed with their prisoners, Preston and Olivia were left to tend the horses, which had been unsettled by the violence. Penny in particular seemed nervous, shying away from Preston's touch. "She'll be all right," Olivia assured him as they worked together to calm the mare. "Just needs time and patience." Preston glanced at her with a small smile. "Seems to be a theme with the females in my life." Olivia laughed softly. "Are you comparing me to a horse, Mr. Hayes?" "Only favorably," he replied with a wink. As they worked, the events of the night, both the intimate and the dangerous, seemed to cement something between them. They moved together with the easy coordination of people who trusted each other completely. "I've been thinking," Preston said as they finished their tasks. "After what happened, I'm even more convinced we should move to your family's property as soon as possible. The house here is too close to town, too accessible from the road." Olivia nodded thoughtfully. "The green place is more defensible, better sight lines in all directions." "Exactly." Preston led the way back to the house. "If you agree, I'd like to accelerate our work there, get it ready within the month." "I do agree," Olivia said, "but what about your business?" "Your clients know to find you here. We'll put the word out. And as I said before, we can keep this place as a base for business transactions." He ran a hand through his hair, still disheveled from the night's events. "Truth is, Olivia, I want to build something lasting, something that can grow. The green property gives us that opportunity." The sincerity in his voice touched her deeply. This wasn't just about security or business expansion. Preston was talking about their future together, a future he clearly wanted to build with her as a true partner. "Then that's what we'll do," she decided. "Start fresh at the green place, together." The following weeks were a flurry of activity. With the threat from the horse thieves neutralized, all three were convicted and sentenced to the territorial prison. Preston and Olivia focused their energy on completing renovations at the green property. They worked from sunrise to sunset most days, taking full advantage of the summer's long daylight hours. Preston hired additional help from town, and Elizabeth Monahan organized a work frolic where neighbors came together for a day of concentrated effort, raising the new barn roof and repairing the house porch in exchange for a feast prepared by Olivia and some of the other women. By mid-July, the transformation was remarkable. The house gleamed with fresh paint, its porch rebuilt and strengthened. The barn stood sturdy and secure, ready to shelter horses and store hay for the coming winter. The corral fences were solid, the well cleaned and reinforced, and Olivia's garden was flourishing in the summer heat. The day they officially moved from Preston's townhouse to the green homestead was momentous for both of them. As their wagon crested the rise that revealed the property, Olivia gasped in surprise. Preston had raised a sign at the entrance to the drive. Hayes and Green Horse Farm, it proclaimed in bold letters. "You kept my family name," she said, touched by the gesture. Preston smiled. It seemed right. This place was green land before it was ours. And together, we're creating something new, neither fully mine nor fully yours, but a true partnership. That night, as they lay in what had once been her parents' bedroom, now theirs, Olivia nestled against Preston's side. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" he asked, stroking her hair. "For seeing value in what others called damaged. For believing this place could be saved. For believing I was worth saving too." Preston turned to face her, his expression serious in the lamplight. "Olivia, you never needed saving. You're the strongest person I know. All you needed was someone to stand beside you while you saved yourself." Tears welled in her eyes at his words. "Is that what you've been doing? Standing beside me, trying to," he said softly. "Every day." Olivia reached up to touch his face, tracing the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. "I love you, Preston Hayes." It was the first time either of them had spoken those words, though the feeling had been growing between them for weeks. Preston's breath caught, his eyes searching hers. "And I love you, Olivia Hayes, more than I thought possible." Their kiss sealed the declaration, sweet and promising. That night they made love with a new tenderness, the words of love freeing something within them both. Summer gave way to autumn, and the Hayes and Green Horse Farm began to establish its reputation. Preston's skill with difficult horses drew clients from as far away as Salt Lake City, and Olivia's head for business ensured their operation ran smoothly. Together, they created a breeding program that emphasized intelligence and temperament along with strength and speed, qualities that were increasingly valued as the West became more settled. By winter, they had 10 horses in their breeding program, with plans to expand further in the spring. The house was snug against the cold, with Preston having insulated the walls and repaired the chimney. On snowy evenings, they would sit before the fire, Olivia often reading aloud while Preston worked on leather tack or small wood carvings, a skill he had recently begun developing. It was during one such evening in December that Olivia set aside her book and turned to Preston with unusual seriousness. "I have something to tell you," she said, her voice both nervous and excited. Preston looked up from the small wooden horse he was carving. "What is it?" Olivia took a deep breath. "I believe I'm with our child." Preston's hand stilled, his eyes widening. "Are you certain?" She nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. "Reasonably so. It's been 2 months since. Well, you know." The wooden carving slipped from Preston's fingers as he moved to kneel before Olivia's chair, taking her hands in his. "A baby," he said wonderingly. "Our baby." "Are you pleased?" Olivia asked, searching his face. "Pleased, Olivia, I'm overjoyed." His voice cracked with emotion. "A family of our own. It's more than I ever hoped for." He gathered her into his arms, holding her as if she were made of precious glass. Olivia felt tears of happiness well in her eyes as she returned his embrace. From the auction block to this moment, it seemed like a lifetime had passed, though it had been less than a year. "We'll need to prepare," Preston said, his practical nature asserting itself even through his joy. "The second bedroom will need furniture for the baby. And perhaps we should hire help for the spring foaling so you don't overexert yourself." Olivia laughed softly. "We have months yet, Preston, though I appreciate your concern." He placed a gentle hand on her still flat abdomen, wonder in his eyes. "A child," he repeated. "I promise you both I'll be a better father than mine was, more present, more stable." "You'll be a wonderful father," Olivia assured him, covering his hand with hers. "Just as you are a wonderful husband." The months that followed were filled with preparations not just for the baby, but for the expansion of their business. Preston constructed a nursery adjoining their bedroom, crafting a crib and rocking chair with his own hands. Olivia sewed tiny garments and blankets in the evenings, her heart swelling with anticipation. Spring brought new foals to their stables and the blossoming of Olivia's pregnancy. Her body rounded with their growing child, and Preston found himself constantly distracted by the miracle of it, often pausing in his work to watch her move about the house or garden. "You're staring again," Olivia teased one April afternoon as she arranged freshly cut wildflowers in a vase. "Can't help it," Preston admitted with a smile. "You've never looked more beautiful," she snorted softly. "I'm as big as a barn." "You're perfect," he insisted, coming to stand behind her, his hands gently cradling her swollen belly. "Both of you." As if in response, the baby kicked against his palm. Preston's face lit with wonder as it did every time he felt their child move. "Strong," he murmured. "Like his mother, or her mother," Olivia countered. "Could be a girl, you know. Either way, we'll be blessed." Preston pressed a kiss to her temple. "Though I hope he or she doesn't decide to arrive during foaling season. I'd hate to miss the birth." "I'm sure our child will be considerate of the business schedule," Olivia replied dryly. In fact, their baby proved to have excellent timing. After a relatively easy labor that began just after midnight on a clear May night, their son was born as the first light of dawn touched the eastern sky. Preston, who had refused to leave Olivia's side despite the midwife's initial protests, cut the cord with trembling hands and placed the squalling infant on Olivia's chest. "A boy," the midwife announced unnecessarily as the baby's powerful cries filled the room. "And a healthy one at that." Olivia gazed down at their son, overwhelmed by a love so fierce it took her breath away. The baby had a shock of dark hair, and when he briefly opened his eyes, they appeared to be the same deep blue as his father's. "He's perfect," she whispered. Preston sat on the edge of the bed, one arm around Olivia, the other hand gently stroking his son's tiny head. "What shall we call him?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. Olivia considered for a moment. "What about James after my father?" Preston nodded, blinking back tears. "James Hayes." "It's a good name, a strong name. James Preston Hayes," Olivia amended, looking up at her husband. "So he carries part of you as well." Preston's eyes met hers, filled with so much love that words seemed inadequate. Instead, he kissed her gently, then bent to press his lips to his son's forehead. "Welcome to the world, James Preston Hayes. You are very loved." The years that followed brought prosperity to the Hayes and Green Horse Farm and joy to the family that ran it. James grew into a sturdy toddler with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determination. He was joined 2 years later by a sister, Emma Elizabeth, who arrived with a full head of honey brown hair and a decidedly strong opinion about everything from the start. By the time James was 5 and Emma 3, the farm had expanded to include 20 prime breeding horses, a reputation that extended throughout the territory, and 4 full-time employees. Preston had developed innovative training methods that emphasized gentle handling rather than breaking a horse's spirit, techniques that were increasingly in demand as the West became more settled. Olivia managed the business aspects with characteristic efficiency while raising their children and maintaining their home. She had also begun breeding a line of horses specifically suited for ladies riding elegant animals, with smooth gaits and steady temperaments that commanded premium prices from wealthy families in Salt Lake City and beyond. On the 7th anniversary of the auction that had brought them together, Preston surprised Olivia with a gift, a delicate gold locket containing miniature portraits of James and Emma, painted by an artist who had passed through Monticello the previous month. "It's beautiful," Olivia said, touching the locket with reverent fingers after he fastened it around her neck. "Not as beautiful as the woman wearing it," Preston replied. his eyes still holding the same admiration they had when he first saw her on the auction block, though now it was deepened by years of shared experiences. Challenges overcome together, and a love that had grown stronger with each passing season. They stood on the porch of what was now indisputably their home, watching James and Emma playing with a litter of puppies born to their faithful sheepdog. The farm stretched before them, green and thriving in the late spring sunshine, a testament to what could be accomplished when broken things were given the care and patience they needed to heal. "You ever regret it?" Olivia asked suddenly. "Bidding on damaged goods that day?" Preston turned to her, genuine surprise on his face. "Regret? Olivia, that was the wisest decision I ever made." He took her hands in his. "You weren't damaged, just temporarily broken by circumstances beyond your control, like a fine timepiece that needed the right hands to set it ticking again." "And you had those hands," she said with a smile. "We fixed each other," Preston corrected gently. "I was just as broken in my own way, rootless, guarded, afraid to belong anywhere or to anyone." He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "You gave me roots, Olivia, you and the children. You gave me a home." Olivia leaned into his touch. "And you gave me hope when I had none, a future when I could see only the past." Their kiss was interrupted by the children's shouts as they ran up to the porch, each carrying a squirming puppy. "Papa, look!" James exclaimed, holding up a black and white pup. "This one can already heal. I've been training him just like you train the horses." "Very impressive," Preston said solemnly, though his eyes danced with amusement. "A horseman and a dog trainer. You're a man of many talents, James." "And mine can sit," Emma announced, not to be outdone. Her puppy, predominantly white with a black patch over one eye, sat obediently at her command, earning a delighted giggle from the little girl. "Well done, both of you," Olivia praised. "Now, why don't you take the puppies back to their mother? It's nearly supper time, and you both need to wash up." The children dashed off, arguing amicably about whose puppy was more intelligent. Preston slipped an arm around Olivia's waist as they watched them go. "We did good work there," he observed. "The very best," Olivia agreed, leaning against his solid strength. "Though I believe we're just getting started." As the sun began to set over the Hayes and Green horse farm, casting golden light across the land that had once been broken and neglected, but now thrived under loving care, Olivia reflected on the strange twist of fate that had led her to the auction block that day 7 years ago. What had seemed like the end of her world had in fact been just the beginning. And as Preston's arm tightened around her waist, drawing her closer for another kiss before they went inside to their waiting children, she knew with absolute certainty that sometimes the things others dismiss as damaged are simply waiting for the right hands to fix them and the right heart to love them exactly as they are.